lobbying effort out there, and we thought we'd bring some level of notoriety to it by riding our bikes from Chicago out there. And
Excuse me, Mr. President.
yes, yes,
That we've been asked to stack the yellow chairs at the end.
okay, yeah. So that was a kind of an epic ride, somewhere 950 miles, something like that, and nice trip. But coming up in 2 weeks, I thought some of you might have an interest in hearing about, and I think it's going to mainly be a video that I've seen about some studies about cats and cat behavior. So how many cat fans are there out here? Okay. All right. What's that? Depends on the cat, and that depends on, the cat's attitude. Yeah, so anyways, other than that, that's going to be 2 weeks. Then coming up in November, November, that's the start of November, and then you've got one going in the third week of November.
Yeah, misconceptions about science you may have learned.
Misconceptions about science you may have learned at some point. December, I think we're going to have people from the Green Sanctuary come in and talk. They're still kind of arranging their schedule and their issues about that too, but we're in discussion with them about that. And Lori's going to talk about more, and that's in the next year, about the AI and kind of as a add on to the discussion we had a while ago. And Lori, you have something going on right now. Did you want to mention something about it? Maybe you want to come up here, and that way we can get it over the website and everything.
So I'm Lori Melhart, and one of the things that we talked about when we talked about AI was the impact on climate, so this is kind of relevant today. They are planning to build a data center just a hop, skip, and a jump from here at the corner of Warrenville and Naperville Road, where the old Nokia glass building used to sit. So they were planning on putting two 200,000 square foot buildings there that would soak up about 10% of the power grid of Naperville. And as you may not know, Naperville is currently 80% coal powered, so this is really a concern for the environment. They claim that they are listening to us and they're reducing their plan down to one building. However, the one building will also it will use 10% of our power. So I'm trying to get the word out. There is a change.org petition. We have 2,400 signatures as of yesterday, and we have been on the news, and we've made the Naperville Sun a few times. But I'd really like to get the word out for people that might be concerned about this, because the other thing that will happen is we will end up subsidizing the power costs of this data center with incredibly raised electricity rates here. That's what ends up happening. That's what we're learning from other data centers in other states. So be on the lookout. I'm going to talk to Steve Cooper about who else to best help me with this information, but be on the lookout for that. And change.org has the petition. Thank you. So, well, okay, officially the approval has not been made. However, this is so close to me that I really keep track of what's happening on that property, and there were bulldozing yesterday and starting to clear down some of the big mountains of gravel that they had. And that concerns me because a decision hasn't officially been made, and yet they're clearly working over there and spending money on it. So the Planning and Zoning Commission has had 2 meetings regarding this. There is a third scheduled for early November. It has not been voted on through the City Council yet, but that's supposed to be coming soon. Thank you.
It's sort of like how they get ballrooms built in Washington, D.C., it sounds like to me. Much the same. All right, so without further ado, I want to bring in Mark to talk about Citizens Climate Lobby and what we can do about things like this.
Yeah, to walk around with? Yeah. You want to walk around? Yeah. Great. Thank you so much for coming out today and learning a little bit. I had a video to show, but I decided that I think I'm not going to show it. I'd rather just talk to you about the things that you're interested in, the questions that you have. Citizens Climate Lobby, just to give you an overview, is a nonpartisan grassroots organization, 200,000 members, mostly volunteers, who are working to get a national policy to address climate change. And I'm happy to answer questions about it, but I'd like to focus my presentation on things that you're particularly interested in. I could tell you, I could start by, we did a lobby meeting in July in DC, and we did a conservative-only lobby meeting last March. And so here's what I got published in the Daily Herald. I said, if I'm a conservative, no one believes I care about clean air and water for future generations. If I'm a progressive, no one thinks I can engage with this government and I need to wait 3+ years. If only there was an organization that could talk with both sides of the aisle about being good stewards of the earth and leaving a healthy planet for our kids right now. Welcome to Citizens Climate Lobby. CCL just completed their annual lobby day in Washington, D.C. 850 volunteers from 49 states met with 401 offices, including 91 of the Senate offices, that's 91%, and 71% of the House. We also left information with most of the other offices. Why do they talk to us? Because we listen. We appreciate that they are trying to help their constituents, and we look for ways we can all benefit. We are nonpartisan, and we work toward bipartisan climate legislation which lasts through different administrations. Consequently, about 70% of the legislation we support eventually passes. We have conservative members and held a conservative-only lobby day with 54 Republican offices last March in D.C. We have an excellent reputation with Congress and work to build relationships because people, thank you, because people are emotional beings and will not listen until trust is established. In this polarized time, we need an organization that can still talk to both sides and help them talk with each other. CCL has 8 active chapters in the Chicago metro area. If you've tired of hyper-partisan politics and want to make a difference, contact us at cclusa.org. We know from experience that working with our elected officials matter. So I was happy they published that. And I don't know how many people listened to the sermon this morning, but for part of it, it was like, whoa, maybe I'm not doing the right thing. Because Mandy was talking about the fact that authoritarian regimes have never been beaten by democracies, and once they got started. But luckily, she continued to say this is not an ordinary democracy, in which case we have more of the people, more of the money, more of the cities, and we think this can be a different type of experience. So I'm interested in what your questions, and I can talk more about CCL and what we've accomplished and what we are going to accomplish, but I really would like to direct my comments to what you're interested in. Do we have that microphone?
I've got it right here.
Okay, thanks.
Are there specific legislative acts that you're working on convincing Congress to vote for? And what has been your experience? I mean, in the last year with lobbying, and what are you working on in the immediate future? And is all of your lobbying with the Congress Or are you also like trying to convince the general population?
These are good questions. There's a lot there to unpack, but thank you for that question. Excellent question. So, if I understand your question correctly, you're interested in how we've handled the new administration and what's been going on there, how we address the broader community as well as the Congress, and what our future plans are. So that's quite a bit. So that's a good question. So the way we handled the current administration is we played defense for this first year, and it's pretty depressing, right? At times, and so our Dana Nucitelli, who is our paid data guy in DC, he did a presentation about what we've accomplished and what it would be like if we hadn't passed the Inflation Reduction Act, the big climate bill. And although we support almost entirely bipartisan legislation, we will support partisan legislation if it will significantly reduce emissions and still protects the bottom 40% of the population. And so we did lobby for the Inflation Reduction Act, and were instrumental in it eventually passing. And so if you compare, if that didn't pass with where we are now, we're still ahead of the game. We had 3 years in which we produced much more solar energy, a little more wind energy, and have reduced, and overall, our emissions reductions are about even. And that's because even though we've produced more solar energy and more clean energy, that's about balanced by the increased demand from, for example, data centers. And so we are sort of stable. We haven't reduced our emissions significantly in this time because of the greater demand for energy. But we have shifted some of that energy to clean energy. So that was the big accomplishment, sort of defense on the Inflation Reduction Act. It could have been a lot worse. When the Republicans when Trump was running for office, he said he wanted to eliminate it entirely. And so the long story short is that didn't happen, didn't get eliminated entirely. There are provisions that are still in place, and there are provisions that have been delayed. One of them being the solar leasing. So solar leasing is still in place from the Inflation Reduction Act. And so because of that, we feel like solar energy, although there'll be somewhat of a pause for a little while, will take off again, because leasing is still incentivized from that proposal, from that bill.
For individuals?
Yes, for individuals as well. But doing it yourself is pretty much gone. Getting an incentive for that. So that's the first part, is what we've done in the past to mitigate some of the impacts. Now, what do we do as for community-wide? We have basically 5 pillars of engagement. We lobby, that's our main thing. We lobby twice a year generally. We're going to lobby again in November. If you are affiliated with CCL or want to be affiliated with CCL and want to go to a lobby meeting, I encourage you to do so. Find out who your representative is if you don't know, and contact CCL and see if you can join. This is going to be an online lobby meeting, so we can accommodate lots of people. When we go to DC, we can only accommodate maybe 6 people at a particular lobby meeting. But for this virtual one, we could have a big group of people. Now, there's still going to be a limited number of roles. The reason they meet with us, as I mentioned in my article, is because we listen and because we appreciate the fact that they're trying to do something for their constituents. Now, of course, they're generally trying to do it to get reelected, right? They may not be doing it out of the goodness of their heart, but because they want to get reelected, they want to do stuff for their constituents, we can thank them for something they've done having to do with the environment, and then we can proceed to listen to them and then talk to them about what their constituents want having to do with the environment. So that's one thing we do. We lobby twice a year. And then in June or July, we lobby in DC. The second thing, pillar, is we have, as we mentioned, 8 chapters in local areas. So we have chapter meetings once a month, and we gather and share ideas and stuff. And also there's a call every month from the national organization, and we talk about what they presented in the call. We've had our Naperville chapter has been trying to encourage more people to meet, so we've been meeting at pizza places, and it's been more successful actually. So people like to gather to eat, so that's been fun. And we met once to go on a walk in the summer in a forest preserve. So we've done a little bit more interesting than just gather and talk meetings. Then we have local outreach, or grassroots, we call it, activities. And in grassroots activities, we do tabling at different presentations. We go to places and maybe clipboard. So we do different things with the community in the grassroots area. And then we call it Grass Tops. Grass Tops is where we try to get local officials, people with more influence, to endorse one of our proposals and then sign a letter or something. And we've had some success with that. We've had particular success actually with the Catholic Church getting some officials, because like our church, most churches have a policy that they care about the earth. And so if you can tap into that, you can sometimes get those officials to say, hey, we need to do something to protect the earth. So we've had some success there. And then media outreach. So like my letter, ads in newspapers, and there was actually a Daily Herald, despite the fact that newspapers are getting hit so hard, they hired a person to deal with just the climate and the environment. And so we've had some good relationships with them. So I don't know if that was 5, but I think that's the 5 pillars of what we do in local and national action. Now, as far as what we plan to do, or what we're working on, right now, I'm the liaison for the Illinois 6th District, so that's Sean Caston. And so I organized the meeting, and we have a good relationship with that office. And so I got a letter from CCL, will you still organize the meeting? And I said, yes. And then they sent me another email that said, how is your progress? How are you doing? And I'm like, oh crap. So I sent a request off, and then I was on vacation. So then I said, I better listen to the liaison call. So I checked the liaison call, and in the liaison call they said, we're not asking for the meetings right now because it's shut down. And I went, So I may have stepped a little bit on somebody's foot there a little bit, but right now we're not requesting meetings yet, even though we're planning on our lobby session the week of the 17th to the 24th of November, but we're waiting to see because the offices are closed and because they're dealing with the shutdown right now. But when we do plan that lobby meeting, when we do get going, we do have specific things we're working on. One is called Fix Our Forests Act. And this one was presented in the House some time ago, and the idea is to try and prevent fires and reduce the chance of fires in forests. But the proposal from Congress was, there was a particular concern that it was going to reduce our opportunity to protect endangered species. And so most of the environmental organizations did not support it. Well, we did, because it was bipartisan and we still thought it was better than nothing. But we also recognized that it needed to be improved. And so when it moved to the Senate, we lobbied and worked to get it improved, and it was improved. And having been approved, more environmental organizations, not all, but more environmental organizations have come on board. The Audubon Society, National Wildlife Organization, meaning a couple of them. So that's one of the things we're working on. We're trying to get this Fix Our Forests Act passed, and it has some Republican and some Democratic support, has some bipartisan support. The other thing we're working on that's perhaps more important and more related to our energy issues is the permitting reform. And we desperately need permitting reform so that it doesn't take 15 years to get a project approved. We don't have 15 years. And we also need permitting reform related to transmission lines. We have lots of green energy in places where there's not a lot of population. So we need to get that energy from those areas to the places where there's a population. And it turns out our electricity grid is a mess. You know, deregulation gave us low prices. You know, there's good things about deregulation. Nobody wants to pay high prices for energy. But it also made all of these organizations all over the country, you know, that have local jurisdictions, states and communities and counties. And so to try and build a line through these things is just a nightmare. So we need some permitting reform. Now, permitting reform is something that in the past, Republicans championed, right? Get rid of regulation, get rid of the red tape. And so you would think, and there is some conservative support for that. And now there's also Democratic support for it because of the need for getting the green energy projects going. And so so my take is right now is that that we can't sell climate change action by talking about climate change. This is my personal opinion. My personal opinion right now is that we need to focus almost entirely on reducing electricity costs or keeping them low and reliability. Because those are two things that everybody can agree is important. We don't want high energy costs, and we want our electricity system to be reliable. So if we can focus on those two things, remember that in the last election, climate change was not a high priority. 70% of young, under 35 Democrats want us to do something about climate change. I've said this before too. How many young Republicans? 70% of 35 and under Republicans want us to do something about climate change. A little shocking, huh? Because they're young people. They care about their future and their kids' future. Having said that, how many, under 35 and under, but who, having said that, who made that a big priority in the last election? It wasn't the top three. It wasn't the top three priority for Republicans, and it wasn't the top three for most Democrats. So if that's the case, And now we're in the situation we're in now. I personally don't think pushing climate change is going to be fruitful. I think we're going to need to focus on, we need energy, we need it to be not expensive, and we need it to be reliable. And if we can focus on those two things and get more permits through, I don't care if the government say, hey, you know, we need more oil, we need more coal, we need more whatever, because solar is out competing all of them without rebates. And most of the projects on the drawing board are solar projects. Wind, not so much, because wind is having trouble with supply chain issues and other issues. Natural gas is, you know, better than coal, of course, but it is also having trouble with supply chain issues. The turbines and stuff are back ordered. So if we can get, you know, just support for making energy less expensive and reliable, I think we can make progress. So that's a long answer to your question. Yes?
Okay. I understand what you're saying about getting agreement around power, but I would think there'd be also agreement about insurance costs and the which is connected to climate change, right? Because of hurricanes and tornadoes and increased disasters of various sorts. So I'm just curious about whether you're dealing with that as well, because I know that's a big issue that Florida is having and that Illinois is having. I mean, you know, it doesn't matter whether you're a blue or red state.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, what is your name? Carrie? Oh, Carrie, thank you. Yes, that's a great point. The insurance issue, anything to do with economics, I think you can use and people will listen. And so, yes, insurance is a big issue, and it is something that we bring up, you know, and, you know, you can also couch it, even though it's a little more on the left side perhaps, you can also couch it in terms of health and pollution, right? People want clean air. Everybody wants to breathe clean air. Everybody wants their insurance rates to be reasonable. So any of these economic and health issues are things that we push and talk about as side benefits of doing something about climate change for sure. And I won't say who, but I know sadly that some people think that the way the big action is going to happen is through a disaster. You know, when for example, if a hurricane comes through and wipes out half of Florida, and then there may be some people that are going to stand up and say, hey, we have to do something right now. But those are the, yeah, we have definitely talked about those things in our lobby meetings, and you know, when they were going to cut the entire IRA, the national organization of CCL did a study and presented information to every congressional district. These are the jobs that will be cut in your district if you eliminate the entire IRA. So when we went to our lobby meetings with Republicans and Democrats, you know, we can say, hey, you know, I understand you're working on the IRA. Can we talk to you about what effect it might have on your constituents? And I am a constituent, by the way. And then they say, okay. And then you say, well, we're going to lose this many jobs if you cut this entire program. And so that's the kind of valuable information that you can take to a lobby meeting and make an impact.
You're
And-
saying, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
You're saying the IRA is the Inflation Reduction Act
Inflation
again,
Reduction Act, yeah.
which is again for, it's misnamed or named oddly to support other ideas, but it's basically there to, does a lot of work for the environment.
Yes, it was the biggest environmental bill passed ever worldwide, but it's been cut significantly.
I'm wondering if you can help address this. Trump has recently cut $8 billion to about 8 different blue states' climate funding. Is that something that you can put into context for us, or do we still need to wait and see what happens with that since it's so recent?
Yeah, I don't really know much about that, but I will say that, we use all of the tools at our disposal. We are not the ones who will sue, but there will be people that will sue, and so they'll be in the courts. And like Mandy said, we resist, right? We do whatever we can to slow things down and to resist those types of changes. And so that, to me, that sounds patently illegal, but, I'm not a lawyer. Yeah? Go ahead.
Fix the Forest Act.
Yes.
Can you talk about some of the specifics that are in it?
That's a good question. I do not know a lot of the specifics about that. I know
Which
that
act? I'm sorry.
I know that it makes it easier to get permission to clean out forest areas. I know that it is designed mostly for logging areas and wild areas where they're designed to clean out some of the lower brush and stuff to prevent the massive fires from taking hold. But
That was the Fixed
honestly,
Forest Act?
Yeah, Fix Our Forest Act, FOFA. Everything's an acronym. Well, it's not passed. Like I said, it was proposed in the House, and it wasn't very good, but we still supported it, and it went to the Senate, and it got better. But it still has to go through committee, and then we still need to work to make it as good as possible. We want to make sure that there's community oversight right away. In any of these permitting reform proposals or proposals to make changes to the environment, you have to make sure that the community is involved early, and that there's that input and that transparency, so that any action that needs to be taken, if it's a bad proposal, can be taken. But you have to limit how long people have to do that. Say 5 years or some amount of time that's reasonable, so that you can then you can get investment to go ahead and say, okay, you've had your 5 years to sue about this proposal. Now we think it's a good proposal, we're going to go ahead with it. But I'm sorry, I don't know more about the Forest Act. Yes.
Hold on.
Power line permitting changes that you're working on, national regulations or state?
Good question. We focused almost entirely on national. We do have some groups do things statewide and locally, sort of on their own, and that's fine. I mean, even though they're like CCL groups, but officially we are focused on national legislation because we feel like that's going to make the most impact. And it's difficult when you have different regulations in different states, makes it more complicated.
So it's a change to try to make it a nationally regulated, because currently it's local and state regulated?
You're talking about permitting reform?
For power lines, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, the idea, I don't think you're going to, we're not going to eliminate all of the jurisdictions. What we're going to do is we're going to streamline the process. If you want to get a gas pipeline approved, you need to deal with one government agency. So you just wait for that one government agency to get approval, and you can shoot your gas pipeline through states. But if you want to get a transmission line, electrical transmission line, you have to deal with a whole bunch of government agencies. And in the past, it's been, well, you get approval from this one, and if you do, then you go to this one, and if you get that, then you go to this one. So it's just so cumbersome. So what we'd like to see is that at a minimum that okay, if we're going to have all these government agencies, let's do it all at once. Let's do them at the same time, and then we can speed up the process. And the other thing is you have to ensure in the legislation that communities where these transmission lines are going through are going to benefit to some extent. That's how you get approval, right? Well, why am I letting this power line go through my county, my farmland, and they're making it way over there in that state, and they're benefiting it from that state? Why am I approving this? So you have to deal with that as well. So you have to change the regulations so that everyone benefits. It gets analyzed early and carefully. You require an environmental study. You get feedback from that study quickly. And then you make a decision, is this a good project or is it a bad project? And then if it's a good project, you go ahead with it, and then you say you have this limited amount of time to sue if you still think it's a bad project. And once that time is passed, then you say, okay, it's a go. And it can't be 15 years or 10 years. It has to be a smaller time frame.
You indicated that's important, particularly for getting the power from rural areas to more congested areas. Does that mean it's mostly important for wind power?
Right now, solar is the
I guess that makes
solar's-
sense too, because
right,
you need a wide area.
Yeah. So right now, solar is the cheapest. I mean, natural gas and solar are about the same, I think, in terms of cost. But but the advantage solar has, in addition to being relatively inexpensive, is that you can build it really quickly. You can't build a nuclear power plant quickly. You can't build a coal plant quickly. Matter of fact, we're not going to build any coal plants. We may, Trump's trying to keep some open longer. And the problem right now, again, with the data centers, is that because the demand is so great for energy, you can make that argument. Oh, we need to keep the coal plants open longer because we have such a stronger demand for energy. But if we can reduce permitting reform and get solar plants that are already proposed, built, because they don't take long to build, then we can supply that instead of with coal, other things.
There's a proposal, or there's a lot of signs when I go riding on my bike through the countryside out west of here and nice farmland and everything, and there's signs all over saying, don't put solar plants on our beautiful farmland and so on, right? And, that's a compelling statement when you hear it. Then you say, there's great farmland and so on. My personal opinion, is that they're using that great farmland to make, feed corn and syrup and corn syrup and stuff like that they provide for people, and soybeans and things like that. So, it's a compelling argument to hear people say, don't take this wonderful Illinois farmland and make solar farms on it. But I don't know what your statements about that would be.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, it's a valid point. There are lots of places that aren't farmland where you can put solar power, and I don't think you can grow soybeans or corn underneath solar panels, but there are some things that can be grown under them. So there are alternatives, but there's lots of places that you can put solar panels that wouldn't interfere with that. I forget what else I wanted to say, but go ahead.
A couple. Couple things on that. I think there's like 1 million acres just made for ethanol, which is kind of like an iffy product. But the counter to putting solar panels up, it's up to the farmer. And right now, with climate change, it's a risk every year planting whether he's going to get his crop. But with partially panels, he's got enough money to pay his bills if he gets wiped out for the year. So in essence, by not allowing that, he may have to sell off part of his land to developers. And all of a sudden, you have houses there, not farm fields anymore.
Yeah.
So there's counter arguments like it's a beautiful field. Well, it may not be a beautiful field. He gets wiped out. He may have houses over there soon. So
Yeah.
that's counter. I wanted to touch back on the insurance thing,
Okay.
because it's becoming a real issue. There's places in Florida where you can't get insurance. And it's going to have a devastating effect on our economy. If you can't get insurance, a bank won't insure your house. You'll default unless you pay insurance. They'll repossess it. Likewise, if you have a house in one of those areas, you can't sell it because the net buyer can't buy insurance. So your home values are going to sink like a rock. And it's becoming quite evident in Florida this is happening. It's happening out west because of the forest fires, not just California, but Oregon, Washington, Nevada. So you need to start dealing with the economic cost of doing nothing, okay? When you're dealing with your senators and stuff. If you don't do this, you're going to have a lot of constituents. Kids can't even buy a house because they can't even get insurance, let alone get the down payment. So it's something that you can really press on. I think there was a report by an English group out of one of the colleges who are basically the Harvard of actuaries. And they call it the tail of the scorpion with the global warming. We all think about, well, it's a 1 in 1,000, my house is going to get hit, no problem. But in the insurance industry, it's like, what's the worst case that's going to wipe me out? And that's what they focus on. And that is bad. And quite frankly, the insurance industry is really pooping bricks right now because they don't know what's going to happen, how to survive.
Yeah, it's interesting that, some of these conservative corporations and organizations are like, they know that things are changing. Farmers know things are changing, and they're worried about it, and rightly so. And so I'll give you one example. The IRA was getting cut, and some Republicans, it passed the House, and it was bad cuts, and it went to the Senate, and some of the Republicans called the Senate and said, "Oh, I voted for this, but could you change it and make it better?" That people do things because of political pressure sometimes, even though they know it's not the right thing. But the insurance issue is a big issue, and it's going to affect a lot of people. Of course, it affects homeowners. And so we have a lot of people in our country who are not homeowners. And so those people are going to get affected if their rent prices go way up because the people that own the places can't get insurance. So yeah, it's an issue for sure. I do want to say one thing related to the sermon today. And that is, I think one of the valuable things about Citizens Climate Lobby is that they'll still talk to us. Both sides will still talk to us, and I think that that's important. We need to know what their concerns are, and we need to be able to tell them what our concerns are. And if we're not talking, it's going to get more and more difficult. And so that's one of the things that I'm really proud of Citizens Climate Lobby, that we still have conservative members in our organization, and we still can talk to both sides in general.
So you mentioned that on both sides, people under 35 are 70% in favor of concerned about climate change, right?
Yeah.
Which actually I would say makes total sense why politicians don't care, because everybody agrees, so that's not a division point that you can use to win an election, right? And I was just wondering, like, how when you're talking to politicians, I've taken a very, like, especially in the last year, taken a completely cynical attitude towards our electoral system, and so I was just wondering, like, how much is the process that you're actually doing, like, changing how you spin things depending on who you're talking to and that kind of thing?
That's a good question, and I hadn't really thought about that as not a divisive issue, but that's an interesting point. Yes, is the answer. When we go to lobby, these are the talking points for Democratic offices. These are the talking points for Republican offices. Sometimes even these are the offices for, I forget how they name them, but like regular Democrats. These are the offices for progressive Democrats. These are conservative Republicans. These are more Republicans. But one of the things we do talk to the legislators about, we say, who across the aisle, if there are people across the aisle you can talk to, and who are they? And that's another thing I should point out. In our lobby sessions, one of the reasons they talk to us and trust us is because we don't share information from our lobby meetings unless it's public knowledge. So if they tell us something in confidence, we keep it in confidence. And so that's another way that we develop trust. Because lots of times we're talking to young environmental aides, and they could be way more concerned about the climate than their representative. And so they might tell you, hey, you can do this that might help. Let's let her ask a question.
Me.
Okay.
Hi. Right down in front. Notice a couple of things that I keep seeing on Facebook and that kind of stuff, especially coming out of Europe, and utilizing solar over highways and byways and permanent construction. So even trains, they got all of the solar panels along the railroad tracks, and they use no other energy other than the sun in order to run their entire system. And as we know, Europe is all trains. They don't have cars, they got trains and bicycles. And the other question I'm wondering about is the utilization of wind. We use these enormous wind turbines now, and they don't cause cancer, so we understand that. There are no eagles underneath them lying dead on the floor. At the same time, they appear to be quite inefficient. They're huge, they take up an enormous amount of space, they are noisy, I will have to admit that. But there are other wind turbines, other forms of they really take full advantage of the wind, and you don't have to turn them, they don't have to do anything, just sort of sit there, and they work. And we have to go thank Galileo again. Thank you, sir. So why aren't we seeing more exploration into those areas?
That's a good question. Right now, the wind is not growing particularly because of the economics involved in some of the supply chains. I have seen some of the technology that you're referring to, some of the wind turbines that they're designing that don't have blades and just sort of take the wind in and turn it into electricity. I'm assuming that those are not going great guns because of economics. They are, the scale or whatever may not be there yet. Go ahead, you had a question? Probably it needs some government seed money. Yeah.
Hi, Mark. Thank you for your activism. I really appreciate it. I have a question. I make a living with working with young people right now. That's my world. And I'm wondering, because I'm, and I have a son that's in that age group as well. And has your organization decided that they might open up chapters on university campuses or other ways that, I mean, if you really want climate change, then we have to get that young group to vote, right? And one of the ways to get them to all vote is to focus on this particular issue, because they're scared. They really are scared. And I wonder if that would be a unifying force. Have you guys thought about that?
It's a great question, and yes, we have a national youth coordinator that works with both college-level youth and high school-level youth. So on the national level, we do. A couple years ago, I got the crazy idea, that, as a former high school teacher, of trying to get all high school lobby meeting. So I emailed every environmental club in the area I could think of over the summer, and I didn't get many replies. And of course, it was really hard, you know. It's like, hey, I'm this guy. This man wants to do something with my students. But I tried to give like a biography. And so I did get a couple replies, and the short version is we eventually got an entire high school-led lobby meeting with Representative Kasten, and then 2 of those people went to DC and lobbied, and then they said they wanted to start an Illinois chapter, and so for a couple of years we had an Illinois youth chapter. The problem is, you know, they graduate. And so this year we had an Illinois youth chapter, but it petered out. But I wouldn't be surprised if it came back.
Only time for a few more.
Sorry, I just wanted to say something quickly about your comment. The really big wind turbines are actually the most efficient ones because of torque is force times distance. So like the longer the arm, the blade length is, the more efficient it is. Yeah, with the turbines.
All right. John, short one?
Yeah, I just want to get back to energy, because there's a lot of complaints out there that solar is driving up the cost of our electricity, where it's actually natural gas that's driving the price up. And I don't know if people understand how electricity is charged, but hourly almost, they go out and say, yeah, I need 10 gigawatts or 5 gigawatts. And everyone who has electricity puts in their bid, and they start with the cheapest, and it goes up the line. Well, it goes up to coal, you know, eventually up to gas. Well, the utilities ends up charging what the top number is for all of it. It doesn't like progressive up. But if the top number is, you know, $5, that's what they charge, even though solar may be only charging 2 or 3 to them. So we got the problem. It's based on the price of natural gas, and that's going to continue going up because it has been confined to the U.S. the price, but now we're exporting it. Here it's selling for about $5 a unit. Overseas, it's $15. And you being a capitalist, where are you going to sell your gas? So it's going to become on the world market just like oil is, and we're going to continue to see an increase in natural gas, which is going to increase our electricity, whether or not we have data centers gone in or not.
I wanted to ask about, one thing that impresses me is that you and I have talked a long time about things like this. You've been with Citizens Climate Lobby. It's easy to get cynical, that word has been said before. And one thing that always impresses me about you, and I've heard some answers to it somewhat, but I wanted to kind of hone in on it. What keeps you from being cynical about this whole aspect of going on? Or is this all just a facade?
It's a good question. On the one hand, I guess I'm a very practical person, and like, what's the alternative, right? And so if there isn't a good alternative, well, then let's make the best of the choices we have. And the other thing is, if you were to get involved in Citizens Climate Lobby and get motivated, I would highly recommend going to DC and lobbying because you have 2 days of training, and then 850 people to 1,000 people go to the Capitol building and take a picture, and then you meet with 3 different, you're all around the Capitol, and it's just real inspiring, the whole process. And you get to see the democratic process to the extent that it works in place. So that's going to the DC lobbying conference and lobbying, and then some local conferences is what inspired me.
I know when we traveled, we'd stop in someplace and have some dinner somewhere or a bar or something like that, and we'd sit there and talk with people in rural Maryland or something like that, and they were interested in us because we were dressed in funny bike clothes, and they were sitting there at a bar, and we'd talk about what we were doing and why, and I think we garnered a lot of respect from people for what we did, and I think that you have a story to tell if you start talking to people about this. You know, it's not just one side versus the other. I mean, it makes sense to me that 70% of young people on both sides are this way, but I think a lot of people at higher levels are too. You know, there's some people that aren't really willing to do anything except toe the party line one way or the other, but we met a lot of people that once we explained what we thought was important about it, and you can always find a commonality and a point of issue, and I think you might have some stories about that or concepts about that.
Well, I remember when Mike, Dave, and Michael and I were riding, there was a guy, we were on the side of the road, and the guy says, "Hey, you want to stop at my house down the road and get a drink?" And we're like, "Oh, we're okay." He goes, "No, real seriously." So we stopped, he gave us treats and drinks. Turns out he was a Republican, and he was really curious about what we were doing, and he really thought our ideas made sense. And he said he would share it with, he had some connections with some Republican politicians in Ohio.
Yeah.
So that was pretty inspiring too.
And you see what's happened to Ohio since then, so we were really successful.
We were. We were.
Well, thank you. It is inspiring to hear you talk because there is that deeper current from you that let's work and let's get something done. And I think we really need that in our country, and that's why it's always nice to hear you talk.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for listening.